Bad things happen to good people because God's strength is ever so present in our weakness. Bad things happen to good people so that we can be so low that all we have to hold on to is God. Bad things happen to good people so that all of the ego can be stripped away so that people can see what God has done or what God will bring people through. Bad things happen to good people because God is sovereign. Bad things happen to good people because there's evil in the world. But God says he turns all things work together for the good. The good, his good, may not feel good to us. It's like, well, how was my best friend died? How was that good? There's a bigger picture that we do not know. God even says his thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not his ways. The question of why bad things happen to good people is one of those questions that stands right there next to what's the meaning of life, and I believe once we really dive into who God is, we can start answering those questions for ourselves. I say that to say, if you haven't noticed, my channel is basically just talking about healing from trauma. For those that have not been caught up on the videos, I have been expressing how I have been healing from sexual trauma from my father, who molested me for years, from the age 12 to around 16. At least as far as my brain thinks back. And that was one of the questions I asked. Because I said, God, I'm a good person. I said to God, why didn't you, strike him down, stop him? I was venting to God one day, and God understands anger. He understands. He can take when you're upset with him. And this day, I was very upset with him. I just broke down crying. I said, God, first of all, why didn't you tell my mama? My mama's so spiritual, and the Holy Spirit lets her in on all these different things that have happened to me and my siblings. I said, well, why couldn't you just tell her? How come when he was doing what he was doing, why didn't you stop him? Why didn't you intervene? Why wasn't there a spiritual explosion that happened in my dad's face or something? Why didn't you? I told God that day, I said I was hurt that I didn't have anybody to go to about my father. Because normally if somebody is messing with you, you run to the one that's supposed to protect you. What happens when the one that's supposed to protect you does the most damage to you. And when I asked God why he allowed that to happen, I felt his answer so strongly and clearly. He said, because I knew that I can trust you. He said, I know that I can trust you. And it was at that moment that I realized that what the devil meant for evil, God used for good. And it's funny, I hide these scriptures in my heart, but I never know the chapter in the verse. I need to work on that. All I know is that part is in the Bible, what the enemy used for evil, God used for good. And I realized that it was my testimony that he needed. There are a lot of people that go through this specific trauma. There's a lot of other ones, that I am not educated enough to talk about, but I do know my situation and people who have the situation that is similar to mine. And I can tell you, when I got that response from God, I cried a different set of tears. I cried first it was from hurt tears, and then I cried from saying these words that I told back to God. I said, well, God, if you trust me I consider it an honor that you put me through that. Because once trauma gets in these hands, baby, whatever the Lord wants to use, he knows that he'll get it out of me, you know. And another reason why I'm writing this, not writing this, I'm writing a screenplay about Beyond the Man, which is the book that I've written about healing from sexual trauma, and writing about the aftermath of Beyond the Man, which I'll talk about on here. You know, after the book came out, you know, talking about what the church, what happened with the church, and what happened with my dad, what happened with our family, what happened with me. You know, there's a lot going on, but know that if there's something bad that's happened that was out of your control, be in good comfort. God is there, and there's a reason why you went through that. I pray that you use your testimony, because the testimony is the strongest thing that we have. One of the strongest things that we have. The Bible does say, you know, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And the testimony is so powerful because it just proves that the enemy lost and that God is glorified. All right.